June 2021, an LAPD spokesperson told Billboard that officers responded to a report of a domestic argument in a place where Chris Brown was known to be. According to TMZ, the woman told police officers that Brown smacked the back of her head so hard her weave came off. However, the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office later confirmed to Billboard that it declined to file charges due to insufficient evidence. And I'll say it again. Just because there's a lack of evidence, this doesn't mean it didn't happen. Just because there's a lack of conviction, this doesn't mean a person is innocent. And I have to ask, why is the legal system not protecting these women? How many women does he have to allegedly assault? How many women have to make reports before he actually faces some real consequences? I was, in my original script, going to make a snarky comment about, like, does he have to kill a woman before something will be done? But honestly, I reckon he could probably do that and get away with it, because other men have. Look at O.J. Simpson. So the O.J. Simpson case is one that I was not hugely familiar with before making this video, but I was like, it kind of feels like it might be relevant, so I decided to look it up, and I read quite a bit on the topic, and one of the things that I actually read was O.J. Simpson's book, which... it's just absolutely appalling. It's awful. It's called If I Did It, and it was written as this like disrespectful, disgusting cash grab after he'd already been acquitted of the crime. And thankfully now any money from the book goes to the victims' families, but it didn't at the time. And in this book, he spends most of the time being super disrespectful about his ex-wife, blaming her for everything, saying that she made him hit her on occasions. He straight up lies. He tries to manipulate the audience. He has, and this is the worst part, the audacity to write a whole chapter graphically detailing exactly why and how he killed Nicole and the other innocent man who just stopped by the house to drop off some glasses for her mum that had been left at a restaurant. And he writes this whole chapter being like, this is all just hypothetical, but let's say I did it, this is how. And he details everything, and it's so damn disgusting. I would argue that, in my opinion, he obviously did it. He was obviously, in my opinion, a repeat abuser, and he was just allowed to keep getting away with it, because the system did absolutely nothing to protect Nicole. And it should have. I was thinking of making a whole video on this book, and I guess I will if people want it. But in summary, I've got a few passages to read for you and just kind of talk about them. So he makes a lot of very vague claims about Nicole and tries to paint her as the bad guy, saying things. And I'm going to be bringing this back to the Chris Brown situation and linking them, so bear with me on this. So he wrote, "The fact is, we still weren't married, and I couldn't go a week without hearing about it. Didn't I love her? Didn't we have a future? Couldn't we have children now while she was still young enough to enjoy them? These little discussions often ended in arguments, and I absolutely dreaded them. Nicole had a real temper on her, and I'd seen her get physical when she was angry. But so he says vague things like this, but he never actually gives any details or solid examples of what her being physical is. He just complains about her glaring at him or being emotional when he won't commit to her. Or, there's instances of him basically implying that he's cheated on her or been in touch with another woman that he had a past with or whatever, and her being upset about it. And then in his mind, it's her fault that she's upset. And this is exactly what we saw in the Chris Brown Rihanna thing. She found text messages on his phone from an ex. He got mad at her for it and beat her up. And in his mind, it's her fault because she started the argument. She made him hit her. O.J. Simpson was saying the exact same things. He'll always make vague claims about, like, oh, she kind of got physical. She could get physical. I'd seen her get physical. But again, he never gives specific examples. But yet, he'll give repeated, detailed descriptions of violent and aggressive acts that he committed, but he wants us to forgive them because she's the one who started them by looking at him funny or being emotional. So it's not really so bad when he does it. So, like I say, there's all these lines about her getting physical, but he never gives examples. But he'll talk about how he smashed up her car in front of her with a tetherball bat, and acts like this is a completely normal reaction because she was upset about him not wanting to marry her. So she's the physically violent one, apparently, but the only examples of violence we see are from him. Later in the book, he talks about all the police reports she filed against him, and he's like, well, the police said there were this many, and at this time, but nah, I don't think there were really that many. The police are clearly making it up. And it's like, why? Why would they do that? why are you trying to manipulate the audience like this? Why are you straight up lying? At one point, apparently Nicole kept this kind of secret diary, which was found after her death in a safety deposit box, in which she detailed all the emotional, physical, and financial abuse that he'd done towards her. And she kept these on like little scraps of notes of paper, little notebooks, little everything, and they were kept in a safety deposit box. And he dares to say, "I still say it was fiction, still maintain that these incidents existed only in Nicole's own mind. I honestly can't make sense of any of it. I've tried though. At one point I wondered if she started working on those notes when the marriage began to go south." Except, why would a woman document years worth of abuse and hide it away in a safety deposit box if it was all fictional and made up? It doesn't make any sense. Again, he claims he was never, ever physical with her. Well, except for these few times that he can't deny because there were witnesses and police and photographs of the injuries. But every other time she must have been making it up, because when there wasn't evidence, it was fictional. And when there was evidence, he did it, but there was a good reason for it. He claims that the one and only single time he got violent with her, it was her fault because she was becoming increasingly erratic. Most of the time she was a loving wife and a perfect mother, but it seemed like lately any little thing could set her off. And so this is the thing, he spends so much of the book calling her crazy, unwell, too emotional, painting her as this erratic woman, but all I see is a traumatised woman who is acting the same way that any victim of domestic violence and intimate partner abuse acts. She was acting like a traumatised, abused woman, not a crazy woman who was asking to be hit, like he paints her. Of course she was emotional and erratic and constantly terrified. Of course she turned to unhealthy coping mechanisms like drink and drugs later in her life, because she spent her entire adult life from when he met her when she was barely 18 up until her death being abused by him. And like I say, even when he admits to hurting her, he downplays it like it's not that big of a deal. There's several paragraphs of him bragging about throwing her around the house, throwing her out of the bedroom, holding her down, locking her in and out of rooms. You know, she apparently tried to slap him a little bit to get him off her, so he's like, well, I had to pin her down and choke her, and it's the only thing. And I'm like, is it? Is that the only thing you can... She eventually called the police on one particular occasion, and he writes, "Nicole didn't come back for several hours. She went down to the precinct with the cops and they took a statement from her and had her pose for photos. It was 3 a.m. by then. She was drunk, she'd been crying, and she was under fluorescent lights without any makeup. Ask me how she looked. They took her to the hospital and the doctors gave her the once-over. In their report, which I only read much later, they noted that there were bruises on her face and arms. That was about it. I could have told them about the bruises. The ones on her arms, I put them there. Her face? I didn't hit her, but it's possible she hurt herself while we were scuffling." So he refuses to take any responsibility. He thinks that the photos only look so bad because she wasn't wearing makeup. And I'm like, come on. It's so damn infuriating. And disrespectful. And, He goes on to write, "The next day or the day after that, I can't recall exactly, a detective came by to follow up with a few questions. I walked the guy through it. I said I'd been drinking, that we were both drinking, and admitted that I'd become a little too physical. I should have exercised more self-control, I said. It's one of those things that happen in all relationships, he said, and I agreed with him. We'd been partying a little too hard, it was late, we weren't thinking clearly. Hey, nobody got hurt, yada yada yada." Literally, he writes yada yada yada. It is sickening, and I'm sorry, but what the hell is wrong with this detective? Because this is not one of those things that happens in all relationships. It's not normal to beat up your partner to the point where they have to call the police. Well, it's not normal to beat up your partner, you know? And this is kind of the problem, isn't it? This idea of violence against women is so damn normalised. Abuse against women is so normalised that, yeah, some people think this is just what happens in all relationships. And again, this is something we're talking about more in the last part of this video, so bear with me. I personally spent a long time in my early 20s thinking this way, thinking that this is just what relationships are. This is just what men are. This is just how men love. This is just who they are. Because I'd grown up seeing my dad be violent and angry towards women, seeing my brother be angry and violent towards women in general, but mostly me. Like my adult brother when I was a child, like he was so damn violent with me. He turned on my mum once as well. I saw my uncle being violent and angry towards women like his wife. And although my first relationship was lovely, after that, I dated so many men who consistently lied to me, cheated on me, manipulated me, made me feel like I was absolute crap. I was an emotional wreck. They made me feel like I was their second choice over other women. One in particular gave me an STD. Like, we would constantly argue, and I was told that I needed to change. It was my fault. I was too emotional. If I was just more X, Y, and Z, then they wouldn't have to treat me this way. You know, it was my fault that they had to go and look for other women. It's my fault that they were shouting like this. It's my fault that this and this and this and this. I was physically hurt by some of these men, emotionally by others, and I mean, obviously not every man, but like, the majority of my relationships were like this, and I thought it was my fault. And I thought that me being upset by it and not able to cope with it was my fault and a failing on my part, because I wasn't emotionally stable enough, and other women could put up with this, right? Because this is just how men are, and, you know, other women seem happy, so the fact that I was upset by it must be a me problem. Do you see how problematic that is? Like, it was only after going through everything with Johnny and him being so damn abusive and physically violent, and then finally getting those repeated threats of him, like, from him saying he was going to kill me. Like, because that was the final straw for me, like, the repeated death threats via text and email and everything. Like, it was only when that started happening, and one of my friends called it abusive, and I was like, oh my God, and they just kept going on, that, like, I realised I couldn't keep living like that, and that maybe what these men were doing to me was not normal, and that this was not healthy, and that, weirdly enough, it wasn't my fault. So I got a lot of help, and I went to the police, and I went to therapy for a long time, and my therapist helped me notice these, like, red flags in partners so I could avoid them in relationships, and she helped me build up my self-esteem, and she helped me feel like I was finally deserving of, like, a healthy, happy relationship, and she finally helped me identify, like, what a healthy relationship is, and what behaviours are healthy and normal and what aren't, because I'd never really seen that growing up, so I didn't know, and I had to have, like, someone teach me, hang on, you know, a man treating you like this isn't healthy or normal. And it's crazy, because since then, like, everything has been so different, and I've actually been able to, like, meet partners who treat me well and who are good people, where, like, they're not constantly lying to me, they're not constantly listing off everything wrong with me, I'm not crying every week, we're not arguing every other day, we're not, you know, they're not physically violent, they're not abusive or hurting me, or, like, well, I'm repeating myself. But, like, once you realise that unhealthy, abusive relationships are not normal, that's not just something that happens in every relationship, once you realise that's true, you can say, hang on, I deserve better than this, I deserve a healthy relationship, and you can start looking for that and feeling like you actually deserve it, and you can find it, you know? Does that make sense? Sorry, I'm a little emotional, I'm a bit, anyway, sorry. I think, in summary, the point I'm trying to make is, I think we need to show people exactly what a healthy relationship is and looks like, and help people understand that that's what they deserve, and stop normalizing abuse, because even though it's common, it shouldn't be normal.